I'm Joey Tedesco, and you're watching the Cartoon Palooza. Oh, who lives in the... Damn it.
Here's a little backstory on the hit Nickelodeon show Spongebob SquarePants. The creator Stephen Hillenburg was a marine biologist with a creative streak who would often make paintings, sculptures, and the occasional comic strip for the kids at his job. That comic strip served as the basis for the characters in SpongeBob SquarePants. It was after he received another education at Cal Arts and worked with the animators of Rocko's Modern Life did the show begin to take form, like Coral.
That was the best marine joke I can muster up. My apologies.
What resulted was an eccentric man-boy with good intentions that manages to be one of my favorite cartoon characters of all time. Clearly, other people feel the same way, since SpongeBob has become a multi-million-dollar cash cow. The show manages to sell so much merchandise, I'd be unintentionally promoting it despite my own intentions.
What?
At some point, a feature film was inevitable, which resulted with 2004's SpongeBob SquarePants movie. This is a big coinkydink since the new movie has recently been released. This new SpongeBob movie is the second time our friends from Bikini Bottom made the jump onto the big screen, which inevitably raises the question, is it nearly as good as the first film?
I don't know for sure, but I do know both films have their own merits, some of which I'll be discussing in my review of today's film, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the first one.
Our movie begins with Pirates of the Caribbean if it were directed by Mel Brooks. This serves as our jump towards telling the story within a film, which truth be told keeps the tongue-in-cheek humor of the show. Now our actual movie begins with a dream sequence leading SpongeBob to wake up hoping to get a promotion at the new, awkwardly placed, extension of the Krusty Krab. Something that's annoyed me about the film and the latest seasons of the show begin here, as soon as SpongeBob opens his mouth.
Hooray! Gary, I had that dream again!
For some reason, I always felt that Tom Kenny dialed the pitch of his character's voice a little too high in comparison to the character's previous form.
But the door is locked, and the only way out is through the perfume department. Oh, I better get going! I'm ready. Promotion. I'm ready. Promotion.
It's an annoyance and might just be a nitpick, but otherwise not a complete disaster as one would imagine.
Who's it gonna be, Gary? Well, let's ask my wall of 374 consecutive Employee of the Month awards. SpongeBob SquarePants!
Gee, don't you think you're setting your expectations a little high?
Oh, for crying out loud, SpongeBob! You didn't get the job!
Okay, well, there you go.
SpongeBob mopes with the villainous Plankton sets up a scheme to, you guessed it, steal the Krabby Patty formula. He plans on setting up Mr. Krabs to steal the crown of King Neptune. No relation. Which causes the monarch to execute everybody's favorite cheapskate. However, it's up to SpongeBob who volunteers to clear Mr. Krabs' name by getting the king's crown back. He gets help from Patrick and the king's mermaid daughter. Again, no relation.
Father, I wish you'd try a little love and compassion instead of these harsh punishments.
By the way, that's Scarlett Johansson as Mindy the Mermaid. What I find funny about her is that she looks just like the character Enid from the movie and comic book Ghost World. This would be incredibly ironic since she played Enid's best friend in that same movie. Either this was unintentional or a pretty cool inside joke. Which would probably be the most I can say about Mindy, since she's really your typical kind-hearted supporting character.
Hey, it doesn't matter if you're kids, and what's so wrong with being a kid anyway? Kids rule!
Brought to us by Nickelodeon, where the kids determined to keep Cora online and give this stuff another 12 seasons.
Don't get me wrong, I like ScarJo, but this is like seeing ScarJo as Black Widow in Iron Man 2 as opposed to the Avengers.
While SpongeBob and Patrick go on their mission, Plankton steals the coveted formula, and we the audience finally see what happens when he does. We never even get to see what happens to the coyote when he gets the Roadrunner, so this is like an added bonus. He rules Bikini Bottom with an iron fist, forcing everybody into slave labor. It does make you wonder what makes those goddamn burgers so special, but I digress. To keep SpongeBob from reaching their destination, Plankton hires a hitman with the voice of Alec Baldwin to take them down.
Did you miss me?
If you thought this was the scariest we've seen Alec Baldwin, obviously you haven't seen him on a plane right before liftoff with his cell phone.
Throughout their journey, SpongeBob and Patrick hit up obstacles like bandits, monsters, and the horrors of campy live-action set pieces. To add to the campy icing to the campy cake, David Hasselhoff, of all people, comes out of nowhere to send our friends back to Bikini Bottom along with the crown. I could think that they agreed to pay him in booze and Krabby Patties in order to get him into this film.
You done good, Hasselhoff. You done. Ow.
And that's the basic plot to this film. And while I do think the new film is a good SpongeBob adventure, I would have to say that this film is a good SpongeBob movie. Well, okay, let me explain.
Even though the new film keeps the nonsensical tone of the show, its plot is nowhere near as furnished as the first SpongeBob movie. Part of which the first film actually has a flowing narrative and doesn't feel like each episode thrown in one after the other. While there's a charm to that, I prefer to see a film that feels like a story made for an hour and a half. If that weren't the case, I'd agree with Homer Simpson on this sentiment.
I can't believe we're paying to see something we get on TV for free.
However, for how much I prefer the story to this film over the last, I have a feeling that it's a little similar to one of the first episodes of the show. In fact, I dare say the plot is practically the same as the episode Help Wanted. When SpongeBob wants to get a job Mr. Krabs feels he's inexperienced in doing. Mr. Krabs is in trouble, SpongeBob gets him out of a pickle through a musical montage and proves him wrong. In the movie, SpongeBob wants to get a job Mr. Krabs feels he's inexperienced in doing. Mr. Krabs is in trouble, SpongeBob gets him out of a pickle through a musical montage and proves him wrong.
Well, yeah, Hillenburg wrote this episode and it's a good pilot, so the connection had to have been made eventually.
One of the things I feel might keep people from liking this film is the moral. I know a lot of people will get annoyed when thinking that SpongeBob should even have a message or a moral, especially since most of what SpongeBob's appeal is are the silly, nonsensical, and oftentimes surreal jokes. While the movie has its fair share of nautical nonsense, especially when it comes out of Patrick.
It looks like what everybody said about us is true, Patrick.
You mean that we're attractive? Did you see my underwear?
No, Patrick.
Did you want to?
Do you still have that bag of wins?
I sure do. Here you go. What?
The movie focuses on SpongeBob's quest towards being taken seriously as an adult. I think as far as including a message into this film, a little forced at times, this one makes sense. When looking at the show's fan base, it appeals to adults as much as it does kids. In fact, I'd argue that the young adults and teenagers are what drive the show's popularity. So when you have an adult like the people who watch the show realize that it's fine to watch what's considered quote-unquote children's programming,
That word makes me shiver.
you realize there's nothing wrong with the picture. The animation's okay. Not spectacular, and definitely not bad. It just manages to go one step up from being television quality animation.
Which is to say that the animation on the show is better than most animation on television shows. Okay, let me explain this.
On SpongeBob on TV, the strength relied on the strong poses and timing, not necessarily on how fluid the motion is. I'm almost certain that the animators could have afforded to animate the characters on ones, but opted out to animate them much like their television counterpart. When it comes to the part where SpongeBob and Patrick get to the surface in a blend of live action and hand-drawn animation, this is slightly better than most. Animating hand-drawn characters and having them interact with live-action characters is not easy. It requires a lot of pre-planning to make it a convincing effect. With the aid of a set and a 10-foot wax dummy of David Hasselhoff, and I'm not kidding, they made a lifelike replica of Hasselhoff that I'm almost certain would have been the perfect scarecrow. It was pretty effective. So on the whole, I prefer watching the SpongeBob SquarePants movie as often as I like watching the show from season 3. The new movie isn't bad, but on a whole, I'd take the first one over it any day. It's got your favorite characters with a good blend of nonsensical humor that makes the show work, and a story most cartoon dorks will get a kick out of watching since it somewhat relates to that kid in all of us. So without a doubt, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie gets a worth it rating in my book.
So for today's question, I'm curious as far as people who have seen the new SpongeBob movie, which one do you prefer? The SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water or the SpongeBob SquarePants movie? Comment and let me know. Now I'm Joey Tedesco, and thanks for watching this review on the Cartoon Palooza.